Guru Nation, how's it going? Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. It really does help me out a lot if you comment. Just put any emoji you feel like, robot emoji, anything. Somebody messaged me today by email, plain old-fashioned email. Yes, you can do this, Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. They said, hey, can you explain like a contract CRA and a W-2 CRA? What's the difference? And then how does one even go about getting started if they want to be a contract CRA? So W-2 is a legal tax status, I believe. The IRS uses a W-2 form in the United States for full-time employees or part-time employees even. Employee versus a contractor. I think that is, there's people better qualified than I to give those discussions. It does get a little bit complex, but just know that an employee is the responsibility of the employer to pay for things like benefits, time off. They're essentially payroll tax, workers' comp. They're essentially responsible for the behavior of that employee when it comes to liability. A contractor, the employer contracts out to a person or a company who is not an employee but an independent contractor, and the tax form they will receive is called a 1099. That's how the IRS files that status as an independent contractor. There's a lot of legal differences, but for the purposes of this video, the main difference is the independent contractor is responsible for their own taxes, responsible for their own medical and health insurance, and they have their own share of the liability. When it comes to liability, like errors and omissions insurance is something that any independent contractor should have that works in clinical research. Now, we can get into the pay, which one's better. So I'm going to tell you, the pay is better as an independent contractor, but nobody in this industry is ever going to hire you as a CRA, at least, as an independent contractor CRA. They want to hire W-2. They want to hire full-time, their own employee CRA. They hire contractors when there's a shortage and they can't find enough people to staff as employees. Then they go out and hire contractors, or they'll hire contractors for small jobs, part-time jobs, short-term contracts. Perfect example, maybe there's a CRO that's doing a 30-site study across the country, and 2 or 3 of their sites are in California, and they don't have any CRA that's a full-time employee, W-2, in that region. So rather than sending one of their other CRAs to go travel coast to coast or wherever they come from, the CRO finds a local CRA in those area where the sites are and says, hey, you want a short-term contract or maybe a long-term contract? You can be an independent contract CRA. Now, they'll put ads out. They'll also look, the way I got my independent contractor role, I wasn't even looking for an independent contractor role. So to answer your question of how does one come about it, I wasn't even looking for an independent contractor CRO. I just put my CRA role. I just put my resume out there on Indeed, on Monster, on ZipRecruiter at the time. It was pretty big. And I got a call from a company that said, hey, you know what? We're based out of Baltimore, Maryland, and we're looking for a contractor CRA in California. Right now, we have 2 sites out there that you're going to monitor. And yeah, it's not a full-time job. It's not a full-time contract, but we pay pretty good. And you work, you get paid door to door, meaning from when you leave your door to when you get back to your door. So you're compensated for that time, and obviously you're reimbursed for travel and hotel. I had my Airbnb. I did have one site that I had to fly to in San Francisco, so they paid for my Airbnb and my flight, of course. So as a W-2 employee, you don't pay for those things out of pocket. they'll pay for it. They'll give you a company credit card. There are cases where you will have to, if you're a contract CRA, where you will have to pay for that stuff up front and keep track. But that's not a, you could be, it gets complicated because you can be a W-2 contract, and it gets a little complicated there. I've never been in that situation, but it's basically, you're a W-2 for tax purposes, but the company has a certain amount of time to commit to fully hiring you. So it's kind of like a trial period. Hey, we want to see how you work on this study. Within 6 months, we have the option to assign you as our employee. So that's a contract to permanent, I think they're called. Contract to permanent. But don't let that confuse you. Let's just keep this simple. What's the difference between independent contractor CRA and W-2 CRA? Besides what I mentioned, the pay is usually better. As a W-2 CRA, when you're starting out, you're probably making $75,000 to $95,000 a year. You do get all your benefits paid for, but that's a salary. So they can load you up with as many sites as they want and as much activity as they want. And a lot of these junior CRAs are really burnt out because they have to go, have all these sites and do all these protocols. Whereas an independent contractor, you have the choice. You can choose your workflow. Now that comes with a risk, because in a downturn in the economy, independent contractors are the first ones to be let go. And doesn't just have to be in a downturn of an economy, but you can go months in between studies without income. So my independent contract gig is over. And to me, I'm actually happy because I have my site I need to focus on full-time, building my site here in Yuma, Arizona. But if I were just a full-time independent contractor CRA, I'd be freaking out right now, going and looking for roles. And if I was desperate enough, I would go back to being a W-2 at some point, because I would need any kind of income, right? It doesn't matter what kind of income. So that's another thing. If you're an independent contractor, you can go back and forth between independent, W-2, back to independent, but you're never going to start out as an independent contractor CRA. You might start out as an independent contractor study coordinator. I've hired a lot of my coordinators as independent contractors. Initially, it was kind of like a contract to permanent position, but I've always then switched them to W-2. DSCS has some employees that are just 1099 independent contractor. And then we also have some employees who are W-2. So it just depends sometimes what the employee wants, what we can provide them as well. So that is the risk of being an independent contractor, is there's downtimes. You're not guaranteed a paycheck. You get paid for your visits. You get paid for the work that you're actually doing. Whereas a W-2, I know a lot of W-2 employee CRAs that work for sponsors or work for CROs. With the CROs, they don't not get busy, right? They're always busy. But with the sponsors, there's periods where they're not doing anything, but they're still getting paid. Like I just talked to somebody who right now it's a non-busy time for their company. He works as a CRA for a sponsor, and he may spend like 4 hours a week right now on his job, but he's getting paid full time. Now, there's other times where you're spending like 50, 60 hours a week and you're getting paid full time as well. So that's kind of the benefits of being a W-2 employee versus independent contractor. If you're somebody who cares about stability, obviously W-2 is the way to go. If you're somebody who wants to maximize the time spent working, independent contractor, but you got to be on your job. You got to make sure that you're getting contracts, or else you don't eat. And then you got to go back to being a W-2, and it's not as nice being a W-2 pay-wise as it is being a 1099 independent contractor. And one does not just go about getting these things. One does not just decide, hey, I want to be a 1099 independent contractor. How do I get started? You get started by getting the experience, and then you get the contracts by networking. And this is why you see a lot of the independent contractor CRAs that are more active on LinkedIn. They go to conferences. They network, they're involved with their ACRP and SOCRA chapters, they're involved with Latinos in clinical research, they're involved with Black women in clinical research, because it's important to network, because it's what keeps their machine going. When you're an independent contractor, you're basically a small business owner. So hopefully this 10-minute video is enough to guide you. I know I haven't done one on this topic in a while. If you want more, let me know in the comments. More questions. And my dog's going crazy right now, but it's perfect timing. Take care, Guru Nation. Looking forward to hearing your comments down below, and send me questions if there's anything you're still not clear about. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.